Vice President Kamala Harris is laying into the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade. Let's take a listen.
I think this is an activist court. This court took that constitutional right away. And we are suffering as a nation because of it. That causes me great concern about the integrity of the court overall.
Now, a few hours after NBC shared that clip, Chief Justice John Roberts indirectly responded. Here was his comments last night in his first public remarks about the Dobbs decision.
The last year was an unusual one and difficult in many respects. It was gut-wrenching every morning to drive into a Supreme Court with barricades around it. Lately, the criticism is phrased in terms of, because of these opinions, it calls into question the legitimacy of the court. Simply because people disagree with an opinion is not a basis for questioning the legitimacy of the court.
Let's discuss now with former Democratic Senator Al Franken. He's the host of the Al Franken podcast, and with me here in Washington, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. Al, let me ask you this. Confidence in the Supreme Court is at an all-time low. I suppose the Chief Justice can say what he wants. He seems to be bristling at this criticism in a sort of, I guess, mild way. But nominees are now confirmed pretty much by party line votes now. And there does appear to be, based on what Vice President Kamala Harris was saying a few moments ago, there does appear to be some wind at the backs of Democrats heading into these fall midterms because of this decision that was overturned. Your thoughts?
I disagree with what the Chief Justice said. The legitimacy of the court was undermined when they wouldn't take up Merrick Garland. And you'll remember that McConnell said it was because it was during an election year. And you remember Lindsey Graham pledging that if a vacancy came open during an election year in 20, that he wouldn't vote for, they wouldn't take up a nominee. They've stolen 2 seats. The one that Merrick Garland wasn't given a hearing for, and the one that Coney Barrett was, where she was seated a week before the election. That destroyed the legitimacy of the court.
Alice, what do you think? Did Chief Justice Roberts sort of, he sort of ignored some of what Al is talking about there, and that there is a tremendous amount of controversy as to how this court got tilted in the direction of the far right.
Just to throw a little accuracy in some of what Al said there. Look, the Merrick Garland was held up because we had a divided government. We had a Democrat in the White House, and we had Republicans in control of.
That's not what was said. That's not what McConnell said.
But that's the way historically this has been. When you're in close to an election year and you have divided government.
That's not the way it's been historically done.
Yes, and when you have divided government, there typically is an inclination to.
Tell me when this happened before. Tell me when it happened before.
When you're. Well, Merrick Garland is certainly one. When there's a divided government,
no, before Merrick Garland.
They're not moving forward. When
Tell me when this happened before.
Al, I'm telling you, this is what the Mitch McConnell
Tell me when
it
happened before.
I can't.
You said this is what happened historically. Tell me when it happened before.
Look, this is the way that the Republicans
went.
Like, I can't give you an exact example of when this happened in the past.
You know why you can't? Because it hadn't happened before.
Look, the basis for not appointing him was because of that specific reason. But moving forward.
No, it wasn't. And McConnell explicitly said that it was the, quote, Biden rule. And he quoted a little piece of a speech that Biden had given in June of '80. And Biden said they wouldn't take up if they weren't consulted. And this was about someone resigning in June after a term of the court, which is very different than someone dying. Scalia died in February. And you saw, you guys, if you can find the tape, you can find Lindsey Graham saying, keep the tape. We will not take up a judge if someone dies, a nominee, if someone dies in an election year in the next in the next election. This is total hypocrisy. And you actually, I'm surprised that you're claiming this and you can't come up with an example because there is none.
Look, to get back to the point of the conversation here.
No,
Kamala Harris.
this is the point.
We're talking about Kamala Harris and her calling the current Supreme Court justices activist justices because she doesn't like the outcome of their ruling. And when they made their decision on Roe v. Wade, they looked at the precedent and they looked at Roe v. Wade and said it was egregiously wrong from the start. And they looked at the constitutional aspect of this and saw that there was no constitutionally protected right for an abortion listed in the Constitution. That's why they took it out. And the most important thing here is that this took an important issue like abortion out of the hands of 9 unelected justices and put it back in the hands of elected officials at the state level, which is exactly where it should be. And the only reason that Kamala Harris says they're activists is because she doesn't like the outcome of their ruling.
Alan, speaking of that, in Michigan, voters will decide on a ballot initiative that would enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution. Al, I have to wonder, anti-abortion activists have been compared to the dog that caught the car with the Dobbs decision, and you have to wonder whether the dog is going to get run over now, because it looks to be the case in state after state. Voters are going to be showing up at the polls in droves to make their voices heard on this.
You remember when Kavanaugh said this wasn't just precedent, Roe v. Wade, but Casey was precedent upon precedent? This is why these guys are considered not legitimate, because they lied in their confirmation hearings. Yeah, they caught the car. You saw in Kansas, it was what, 59 or 40, no, 59, 41 in Kansas. This is a pretty conservative state. And you saw what happened in Michigan is a perfect example of how the Republican Party has ceased to participate in good faith in our democracy. This was their canvassing board that is a 2-2 board, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. They had 750,000 signatures from people saying, we want this on the ballot. We want to be able to vote on this. These 2 commissioners said, oh no, they found some absurd little like spacing in the, and so they rejected this. Well, the Supreme Court then decided 5-2, and it's a heavily Republican Supreme Court, that what they were doing was absurd, what they were doing. So now the people in Michigan are going to decide. And look, this is something that a woman should decide, that a woman with her doctor should decide. This isn't something that should be decided by other people.
What do you think, Alice?
I think this should be decided not by the Supreme Court, but it should be decided at the state level. And look,
How about guns?
Are you worried about the political consequences of this? That
we've already seen
Republicans may pay a price.
We have seen consequences for this. Kansas is a perfect example. Al, you're right. When abortion is on the ballot, up or down, there's a lot of support across the board for abortion protection. So when it gets down to it, and these are ballot initiatives, and we're going to see more and more of them, more people do side for abortion protections. The most important thing, though, is pro-life advocates like myself. I think there needs to be exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. And any state that does not have those exceptions is doing a tremendous disservice to the pro-life issue. So we need to make sure and keep those exceptions in place. But look, I support life.
How about doing a disservice to the women?
Look, again, I think a service to the sanctity of life is what I stand for, and I think we need to protect life.
That's your religious belief. If you don't want to have an abortion, don't have one.
But the point is, there are going to be, at the state level, a lot of times where the people that are supportive of the pro-life issue and supportive of overturning Roe v. Wade, it's not going to be a great outcome for us. But the most important thing is that the pro-life movement and social evangelicals fought to overturn Roe v. Wade to put this back in the hands of the people, and that's exactly what's happening.
It's not a great outcome for a 10-year-old who's raped and has to go to another state. And these justices, I asked you right at the beginning of this to come up with an example. You still haven't.
All right.
This is an illegitimate court.